Lager is easily the most popular beer on the planet today.
Born in Germany over 600 years ago, it's built on an incredibly deep heritage.
But the term lager is too often misused.
Rather than a single style of beer, it actually refers to a hugely diverse family.
This covers everything from soft, bready Helles to rich, fruity Doppelbock.
Which means no, not every lager is a crispy boy.
But they do have one thing in common.
They're fermented cool and undergo a long period of cold conditioning, or lagering.
So the invention of mechanical refrigeration in the late 19th century was crucial to its booming popularity.
As was the growth in pale lagers like Pilsner and later Helles.
At a similar time, German immigrants introduced lager to North America, laying the foundations for another brewing powerhouse.
Which ultimately brings us to where we are today.
So it's almost a running joke amongst brewers that lager is a style that when you're first getting into beer, you'll really neglect. And you'll almost kind of avoid it for the sake of really full flavoured beers. So things like IPAs, Belgian beers with a lot more character to them, before eventually cycling it back around to lager because it's always there for you, it's always so reliable, and especially if you're actually working in a brewery, it's ultimately the thing that you want to crush at the end of the day.
Most people who I knew, or know should I say, in craft beer, who have an interest in craft beer, just see lager as piss, and again see it as like cheap. It's like a bragging rights that you drink more expensive beer. Why would you spend that money on a more expensive lager when it has like this view of shit, cheap beer? So I think if you can cut away at that classism and elitism, I think that's when you could start proper chipping away at a British lager.
So up until I started to get a bit more into beer, I always understood lager to be kind of classic American light lagers, so things like Budweiser or kind of Coors Light, that kind of thing. So it was really interesting to me to finally discover classic German style lagers that had a lot more character to them. So things like Augustiner Helles, for example. And trying that for the first time, I was like, wow, this is definitely going to be my end of shift beer forever.
Probably the first time I went to Munich with a large group of people and going into the Augustiner Braustavern and drinking a litre of Helles was quite good, and that kind of really ignited the love.
Personally, something that I really love to see in a lager is a really strong malt backbone. So whether that is kind of a darker malt backbone, so something like a Schwarzbier where you've got a really lovely subtle roasty character, or a Dunkel where it's a little bit more treacly, or even a Helles where it's just that amazing kind of honey bready character. I think the malt is just the perfect base for all of the other kind of subtle characters to lay on top. In terms of hop profile, I really love something quite subtle but quite herbal to come through. So any lager that features especially German noble hops, so things like Hallertauer, Tettnanger, really love to see that.
But I think for myself, I do like a good malt, good malty flavour, something quite strong, as in like flavour-wise, and crispness always, like freshness, but I guess that's the whole reason why you drink lager, isn't it really?
The main thing is drinkability. I kind of see lager a little bit like cask beer in that it's made for a social situation. It's supposed to be kind of drunk in volume and not really thought about too much, so as long as there's no off flavours, then I'm pretty happy.
My light bulb moment in the style, I would say, would be Northern Helles by Don Zocco. A drank lager in a sort of classic sense, like how everyone else does, at like pubs and stuff like that, but never really looked into it much regarding like craft beer. And then I wanted a crisp drink, and I had it, and a kind of bulb was like a ding, I guess. Like. And I was like, yeah.
Examples that I love are Augustiner Edelstoff, Tegernsee Spezial, Paulaner Salvatore, any of the Ayinger beers, Marsbrau, Joseph Holt's Diamond is excellent as well. Allowed to say Cloudwater Pilsner, I'm quite happy with that.
I try different things, but there's not like a go-to. I guess if we're being really honest, then my go-to would be Stella in the pub, but don't think that's quite the answer you want.
I think there can be a bit of a culture of thinking that kind of the stronger a beer is in terms of ABV and flavour, that the better it's going to be. Or when it comes to things like stouts, the more adjuncts you throw into it, the better it's going to be. But sometimes there is just real style in simplicity, and not everyone knows that a lager is actually or a light lager in particular, is actually going to be one of the most difficult styles of beer to brew. So if you're trying to judge a brewery on how good it is, rather than judging them on their kind of really big dippers with a load of hops in where you can kind of cover anything up, you really need to be judging them on their pale, pared back light lagers, because that's really where the technical skill comes in. And when you know that, you can just try lager with a completely new appreciation.
Lager is life, in that life is a product of society and being social.